Um, Hi, everybody. It's Colin Stevenson here, joined by my hero, John Lenhart. Hi, John.
Hi.
Today, we've got something special for people, especially men, and we're going to talk about how they can have the best sex ever. Now, for me, sex means a lot more to me now than it used to because I've learned a lot more about myself. I've learned a lot more how to communicate with people, even not communicating through words. It can be feelings, touch, vibing. These different things make it better for me to engage in the art of sex. Now, I say art because that's how we express ourselves. Now, you have today for us um, an explanation as to how men can have the best sex ever.
Right. It actually is going to benefit everybody because it'll explain a lot of issues that no one else seems to be able to explain. And so what we're talking about here is the best sex you're going to have is when all of your brain is involved. So when 100% of your brain is involved, most people are having conscious brain sex, which is just 10% of the brain. Yes, it can feel great. But when all of your brain is involved and whenever anybody talks about the best sex they've ever had, it is when all of their brain is involved. Now, why wouldn't you want that all the time? And what I want to explain is how it happens and how we block that. So I'm going to give a quick example because one of the things, I think we've talked about this before, but I've said, if you know a guy who's attracted to his wife, how would you tell him to become more attracted? He's already attracted, but how would you tell him to become more attracted? And the answer most people, what Mark Twain said was, as a joke, he said, I'd tell him to look at ugly women. The thing is that what most people do is they try to solve this consciously. They tell the guy, tell yourself she's the most beautiful woman in the world. I would be nowhere without her. Tell yourself all this stuff consciously. That does not involve your unconscious brain. Yeah. So what happens is your unconscious brain doesn't know what you're thinking until you say it or write it out or, do it. Doesn't know your intentions. So what we say is if the guy shares with his wife something he's never said out loud, his unconscious brain wants to know about it. It's finding out about it because of her. His unconscious brain will juice him, give him energy towards her, and that will feel like an increase in attraction. So that's a small example of how our unconscious, we can get our unconscious to drive us and give us more energy towards someone we're already attracted to, and that attraction will grow. That's a small example of how we get the unconscious in. So the best sex would be to get our unconscious involved towards the person we're having sex with.
Okay, so would this be on an emotional level or would this be on a factual level? Because I'm trying to think, like we've had the discussion before where when we share how we feel about something that we normally wouldn't, that's us sharing. So that we would gain energy from that. And it would also allow the other person to gain energy because they're feeling us now. But then if there's factual things, like we might not say things because we don't want to put our foot in it, or we don't want to say something because we might feel embarrassed or vulnerable after it. So would you say that would be more on a level of emotion or facts or tangible things?
All of it, plus our actions. So now here's how this normally goes. A guy becomes, you could say obsessed, but a guy becomes focused on a woman. Yeah. And he stares at her all the time. And he's looking at her all the time. And he's going on Facebook or social media and looking at her all the time. So he is telling his unconscious brain, I want to be with that woman. And he might get to talk to her. And then he might tell her, I'm so in love with you. I'm going to make you happy for the rest of your life. I care about you so much. I just want you so much. You don't understand how much I just want you so much. Yeah, because all of his brain is driving and juicing him towards her like crazy.
Yeah.
So that if he has sex with that woman, it will be the best sex he ever had, because he's told his unconscious for a while, this is the only woman I want. And when he's having sex with her, his unconscious brain's going to be there going off. And that's great. Except what does that guy tend to do after he's had sex with that woman, a couple of times?
He'll not have the same drive and passion because he's not focused on that anymore.
Because he's focused on
other things.
Or another woman. This is where, earlier when you said some people say, think about another person while you're having sex with this person. And you said, you don't do that. And I smiled like, good job. That's why. What happens is these guys are with this woman that they felt all this, and they're staring at another woman. And now what does their unconscious brain think? Oh, you want that woman now. You don't want this woman anymore. You want that woman. So when you have sex with this woman, I'm not going to be as involved. Yeah, I'll be involved if you get over. This guy is taking his own attraction away, and women have to deal with that. Yeah. Women are like, this guy promised me the world and everything, and now he doesn't care. Did I do something wrong? Now the woman's thinking she did something wrong. It was her fault and all this stuff. But in fact, what it is the guy is taking his unconscious brain and staring. And that's why when these guys go, oh, it doesn't matter if you look at other women. Okay, but why are you looking at a woman you're never going to have sex with?
Yep.
What's the point of that? It's going to take away from whoever you're with right now. So that's one of the first things I used to do when Jonathan and I had this How to Be a Man class. One of the first things I used to do is I used to explain to people, what is your unconscious brain seeing if you're a guy? In these two scenarios, you pull up to a stoplight and you look at the stoplight for 2 seconds. And then you look at this nice looking woman walking down the street for 2 seconds. Then you look at this person in the crosswalk with a dog. Then you check the light again for 2 seconds. Then you see someone else. Then someone honks the horn, you look at the light, you take off. Versus you pull up the light, you look at the light for 2 seconds, look at the good looking woman for 5 seconds, you look at the person in the crosswalk for a second, you look again at the good looking woman for 5 seconds, and then it's time to go. Your unconscious brain goes, you want to look at her. That's what you want to do. Let me help you with that. I have guys who tell me, John, I have this like superhuman ability. I can walk into a room full of people and I can instantly spot the best looking woman in the room. And I just like go, so what you're telling me is you stare at a lot of women and you stare at women longer. The more attractive they are, the more beautiful they are, the more you stare at them. And you've trained your unconscious brain to go, I just want to look at the most attractive woman. So when you walk in a room, your unconscious brain knows where she's at. And all you have to do is go like this, and your unconscious brain will hit you and you go, there she is. Yeah. All that's telling me is you just stare at a lot of women. That's how you got that ability.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we remember the film, I don't know if you remember, Shallow Hal. Right, and I think our good friend Tony Robbins was in that as well. He was the one that did the hypnosis. Now, when in this film, again, because he was always focused on staring at the good-looking women, he was missing out the real women with substance. And I don't mean good-looking women don't have substance. I'm not meaning that. But he was missing out on all these people with substance. That sounds better. He was missing out on so many people with substance to their soul, to their heart, to their personality, that he wasn't doing it because they maybe didn't match the same criteria as these other women. So we're basically, exactly what you've been saying, we've been shown this. But again, people don't realise, because they've not been given the words that you give them, that this is what's been going on. So when you've got a hypersexualised kind of social circle, or a hypersexualised on social media, everything's hypersexualised now, and it's always getting the best looking people as far as society is concerned to sell products, to do that. No one's ever paying attention to, again, the things with maybe extra substance or different ways of working, and it's a very shallow way to live.
Right, and the thing is that it takes these guys' attractions to their wives away, or to the woman they love away. And so what happens is I tell these guys, because what happens is every time we as a guy see a woman, we think she's the perfect woman. She's the perfect woman, because beauty is lack, of imperfections. The definition of beauty is it's an appearance, it's symmetry. So the less imperfections, the more beautiful. And the more we stare at a woman, the more we see her imperfections. So what happens is if we glance over, because we're going to see women, guys said to me, 10 years ago, how do you handle this? And I said, okay, you're going to see a woman. But what I say is look away and look again in 10 minutes. Now, 10 minutes from now, she's probably not going to be there. And the thing is the point is I can't say don't look at her, because if you give someone a don't, they're 3 times more likely to do it. I see this woman, look away and look back in 10 minutes. In 2 minutes, I'm going to go, oh, what was the big deal? In that moment, it's everything. Yeah. But if I can get myself out of that moment, it's no big deal. The thing is like the shallow Hal thing is, if you look at all women the same amount, to realize your unconscious is watching you watch what you're looking at. So are you're training your unconscious is what you're doing. So if you're going to look, I try to look at all the women the same amount, because I'm going to see people. I'm not going to look at the floor and walk around and bump into stuff. But it's like, if I look at everybody the same amount, then my unconscious goes, he's just looking at everybody. Then if I'm going to stare, why don't I stare at my wife? I'll stare at my wife, because I'm telling my unconscious, that's the woman I want to be with. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the key things. First of all, to get out of this hole is these guys who are staring. And I'm telling you, Colin, whenever a gorgeous woman walks by, I love to look at all the guys that she walks by. So that's the other reason. Like, a gorgeous woman walks by, I'm not going, I'm going to stare at the woman. I always smile and go, I'm going to stare at the guys around this woman, because you know how that is, Colin. She walks by and every guy does like they rip their heads off. All over the internet, these videos of these little, 4-year-old boys riding a little bicycle in the wall because they see a woman or something. It's in us guys. That doesn't make it right or good for us, but it is in us that we do that. So you got to play this game where it's like, oh, there's a gorgeous woman. I can recognize a gorgeous woman. I am now going to watch the guys watch her. And that's how I'm not looking at her. And that's how I'm telling my brain, yeah, I know she's a gorgeous woman, but that's not who I'm going to stare at. So that's one of the ways to get us out of the hole. So the first thing I want to do is I wanted to help everybody get out of the hole that us guys, we are putting ourselves in the hole when we start staring at certain women and ignoring other women.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you were talking about looking at everyone differently, I'm a massive fan of people watching, and I have been for years. People fascinate me, and I would literally go and walk through a train station and just see what I can see and what I can pick up, just out of enjoyment. It's not creepy, it's not weird. I used to make scenarios up in my head and, imagine what the people were like, and, just kind of take myself through my own journey, my own imagination. Now, with me doing that, I used to do it in acting classes as well, the exact same scenario, and that's what got me into it, because we used to go and people watch. We used to lock on to one person, follow their image, follow their actions, and then go back to the acting class and act out who we think that person would be. And it was really good for confidence and things like that as well. Now, every time that I went back to the class, I always chose the homeless person, or I always chose the person that was quietest, or the most wacky, or the most, the ones that people tend to shy away from. And then what I found was there was a lot of people trying to go, and the women were trying to be the models, and the women, they were trying to hold themselves in higher regard. The men were trying to go with the men that were harder or looking bigger and stronger. But as I always went for the opposite look. So what you're saying totally resonates, and it just shows it's actually a compliment to myself, because it means I've always kind of had a healthy mindset in terms of that anyway. And I've always kind of focused. So when you look at people the same, and yeah, you can say, oh, attractive, yeah, cool. okay, well, that's cool. They've got nice shoes or they've got nice hair. Even if I'm not as attractive as that person, I always, when people come towards me, I always give them a compliment in my head. And I know that sounds weird as well. But again, if I give that person a compliment, nice shoes, nice face, nice hair, nice jacket, nice bag, whatever it is, you're allowing yourself to be more open to everybody. And I know it's taken us away from the relationship thing, but in terms of what you're talking about, I totally feel it and vibe you on that level.
Well, I think you actually fed right into it, because when you think of a compliment, it comes out your face unconsciously, and there is that communication.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. And that's the thing, is when you're looking at a beautiful woman and she looks you right in the eyes, what's in your brain is coming right out. So if it's something that's a compliment or hey, you're another person, you know, the beauty within, that's what's coming out. Okay. So the first step here is to realize how us guys are taking ourselves off course by staring at certain people longer than others, or doing that. Now I want to talk about the second thing that will help people, and it's to understand a part of the brain. So in a previous video, the first video we did on sex, I talked about if you took a woman's brain and damaged it in 4 areas, you'd have a man's brain.
Yep.
I don't know if men have damaged women's brains or women have super men's brains. You can decide about that. We talked about the first area of damage is the nucleus basalis, which is women can have up to 5 thoughts at one time. Men tend to only be able to have 1. It's like their nucleus basalis has been injured and it doesn't move very fast. The second part of the brain I want to talk about here, it's really important, is called the nucleus accumbens. And the nucleus accumbens is involved in addictive behavior. It's involved in reward and all this stuff. And here's the thing. A man's nucleus accumbens fires when they see a naked or scantily clad woman. It's the same response as if a person who is starving saw a plate of food like 10 feet away. They want to consume it. A woman's nucleus accumbens doesn't fire when she sees a naked or scantily clad man. So here's the issue. So we watch these movies and all of a sudden they show a pair of breasts, you know, somewhere in the movie for no reason. And the only reason they're there is every male in the audience's nucleus accumbens go off and they feel a jolt. So the previous installment, we talked about porn. Yeah. And so that's what happens is these guys look at porn and this nucleus accumbens is firing and it feels good. And not as many women look at porn. I'm not saying they don't, that's a whole nother issue, but women don't look at porn for the same reason men do. Women are looking at porn and the part of their brain is just firing. For men, it is firing. They're getting energy in doing that. Now, here's the issue. The reason why that's a good thing for a man is if his wife is the only woman he sees naked, then his nucleus accumbens will always fire, regardless of what she looks like. Yeah. So the issue is there's this thing in a man that will fire when he sees his wife naked, but if he's using that and firing that for everyone, all these women, then, and he takes his unconscious away, then we're back to that 320 sex. We're back to porn, and we're back to really the excitement they're getting as they're firing their nucleus accumbens while they're having sex, which is 10% plus a little bit. So it's like 15% sex, and they're missing out on 100. So one of the issues where men's brains are damaged is that. And that's why, if you think about it, a woman can make a guy stupid. You know, if she's naked or she's showing a lot of cleavage or she's dressed a certain way. And that's what I'm saying is every guy is programmed to become stupid when a scantily clad or naked woman walks by and these people run into stuff. So there's some countries that have their women cover up completely. Why? So the men aren't stupid.
Oh, right, okay. So that makes a lot of sense. And I'm actually taking myself back to when I was younger and when I wasn't so clued up on the way that people work and how the world works. So I used to be that stupid guy that used to fumble when it came to my conversations. Like if someone extremely attractive came up and I was to have to engage in some sort of way of communication, I would be all over the place. Not because I was embarrassed, clearly not. It's because that my brain's firing off in the wrong way, which is not, it's giving me too much. Whereas now, because I look at things on a deeper level, it doesn't really matter who I speak to, they all get the same version of me, which means that, again, I'm more healthy within myself, which is great. It doesn't mean that I don't get, kind of woken up when I see a naked woman or these type of things. So that's not true. I'm a man and I'm a human, and that's okay. But I just don't allow it to take over my life in a way where it allows me to not be able to focus on the kind of game at hand.
Right. So the thing is that in a movie, all of a sudden there's this naked woman in a movie. Your unconscious is watching you. What are you looking at? And it's a great opportunity to look right up at her face or to look at the people around her in the scene dealing with her or whatever, versus staring at a body part and staring at it is telling your unconscious, oh, and it's taking you off course that way. So that's where this is kind of complicated. That's why we brought a lot of this together, is that we're going to do that. So when women dress, provocatively, it's not the men who complain. It's the women, especially if a woman's husband is there, it's the married women who complain because that woman's making their husband stupid.
Yeah.
And that woman is making her husband start to take his unconscious away from her. And then now he's going to start doubting whether he's really attracted to his wife and everything because he might not perform as well. So I want to close this with giving men the best way to convince their unconscious brain that they want to have sex with the woman they're with. And that is to do something for her that she doesn't know about. So one of the things you can do as a man is, like, for instance, I'll vacuum our place because for my wife's a perceiver and she's very specific about stuff. And so I'll do that, or there's other things I'll do that I'm not doing it to say, hey, did you see I did that? I'm not doing it to get any sort of affirmation from her. I'm not doing it to get any of that. I'm doing it because I love her and I want to, and I'm thinking about her and I'm thinking the best about her. And I want my unconscious to go, wow, you really do love her because you are spending time thinking about her and spending time doing something for her. And you're not even doing it to get some sort of affirmation. You're just doing it because you must actually like her. And my unconscious brain shows up during sex. So one of the key things I help guys with is if there's someone, if you're married, you're having sex with this woman. First of all, why would you look at any other woman? It's a waste of time. And it takes away from this.
Yep.
Second of all, what are you doing for her every day? Even a little thing that you never have to tell her about. And you're really doing it for your unconscious brain. Yep. And that's the backward step in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the way you're talking there is women appreciate the small things because it lets them know that they're secure. And everyone needs a bit of security. You get people that say, I don't need anybody and I don't need this. But if they're in that relationship, they need to know that both sides are involved. Men get the love and affection of the women that makes them feel nurtured. And as long as women are having their the small things done, even if they don't need to say anything or do anything, like you quite rightly said, if they say, oh, I see he's done that, he made the bed this morning where we don't usually, these small things allow them to think that they're thinking ahead. And that's all that they need to know. When they disengage and they actually stop doing the little things is the point where the women can then either stray themselves because they're not being seen as being loved anymore, or the fact that they might not feel as loved and the relationship can come in on itself. So yeah, I feel you completely.
Right. And we talked about that in the very first video on sex, where women need to be down to one thought to want to have sex, and they have an orgasm at 0. So when a guy does stuff around the house and gets things out of the way, it helps the woman come down from 5 thoughts to 1. So the way women go about sex is different than men. And that's why men ought to be doing these things to take thoughts away, from the woman, to take things she has to worry about. And that's why those little things are so important, because a woman will be thinking about a little thing and it adds a thought. So
yeah, and
we'll talk about women another time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, because that'll be an interesting subject, I'm sure, for people watching. So thank you for today. I'm sure it's given men and women a lot to think about, and they'll be able to look out for things, or even be able to plant seeds to allow their men to start sparking again, or maybe show a bit of extra cleavage to gain that attention back. Take the turtleneck off this afternoon and put a blouse on. Allow it to come through. So thank you, John. And I look forward to speaking to you next time. Take care.
Bye.